You're moments away from going on stage and giving a speech. You've been preparing for weeks and anticipating this moment. However, all of a sudden, your hands start to sweat, your throat becomes dry, you get butterflies, and your heart starts beating. It's called speech anxiety, and it's very common. It's actually the most common phobia, according to the National Social Anxiety Center. It is above the fear of death, spiders, and heights. It affects about 73% of the population. I have always had a problem with speech anxiety. In the seventh grade, my friends and I put together a song to perform at our camp talent show, but when the moment came to go on stage, I couldn't get out of my seat. I was terrified. Although speech anxiety is very common, there are ways to decrease speech anxiety, and we're going to talk about those today. So, today we're going to talk about what speech anxiety is and how to decrease it through your thinking and your behavior. First, the fear of public speaking, defined by the Public Speaking Project textbook, is also called communication apprehension. This is different from normal stage fright, which is a fear, a general nervousness felt by everyone. There are three types of communication apprehension. The first is trait anxiety. This is connected with your personality. Next is state anxiety, which is derived from the environment that you're in. Lastly, scrutiny fear, which is a fear of being watched or feeling like you're being watched when you're performing. So now that we've looked at what speech anxiety is, we're going to look at how to decrease speech anxiety through something called cognitive restructuring. According to Kupnick in her article, Understanding Cognitive Restructuring is just a way to understand and change your unhelpful thoughts in times of anxiety, in our case, during speech anxiety. There are 4 steps that she gives to go through this process. First is to identify automatic thoughts. These are just things that you think naturally about the situation. This could be that you're worried that everyone's going to be looking at you when you're speaking. Next is to identify cognitive distortions, or things that are wrong about how you're thinking. Third is to dispute your thoughts, or to bring truth into the matter. And lastly is to replace those unhelpful thoughts with something helpful. So in my example, instead of being afraid that everyone's looking at you, you will understand that the audience is looking at you because they're being respectful because you're speaking, and they're just trying to be supportive. Here are some more tips about cognitive restructuring taken from Stanborough's article on cognitive restructuring techniques and examples. First, he says to self-monitor your thoughts. This is just being aware of what you're thinking. Next, question your assumptions, gather evidence, perform a cost-benefit analysis, and then gather alternatives. So now that we've talked about what the fear of public speaking is and how to decrease it through cognitive restructuring, we're going to talk about how to decrease anxiety through developing different public speaking skills. So the first is to practice or prepare for your speech. According to the Public Speaking Project textbook, doing this makes you understand your material really well so that when you're speaking, you can adapt and you won't be as nervous. Second is to do breathing exercises before you go on stage to perform your speech. According to the textbook, this makes you relax and helps you decrease your anxiety. There are many ways to do this, including laying down, putting your hands above your head, taking slow, long breaths, usually done right before you go on stage. Lastly is to visualize. Vishen gives us some tips on how to visualize for a speech in his article titled Conquer Your Fear of Public Speaking Using Visualization Techniques. The first is to visualize your speech in a first-person way, as if you're giving a speech, because you will be. Second is to visualize in a multisensory fashion. This is just imagining all the things that you're going to be experiencing while you're giving your speech. Next and last is to visualize the speech going well and to visualize it specifically. These areas in your brain that visualize connect with the areas in your brain that actually implement your actions and can help you decrease your speech anxiety. So, in conclusion, today we've talked about what speech anxiety is and how to decrease speech anxiety through the way that you think and the way that you behave. Speech anxiety is different from just a general nervousness when you speak, and it includes 3 different types: state anxiety, trait anxiety, and scrutiny fear. We can decrease all of these anxieties through what we talked about, cognitive restructuring, and developing these skills in practice, breathing, and visualization. Although speech anxiety is really common, you can decrease it. So I would highly recommend that you utilize these things that I've told you in the next time that you're preparing your speech.